Hi class, in this video I'm going to be going over our benchmark assignment, which is a mathematics unit plan. So in a unit plan, you're going to be integrating either multiple standards or multiple lessons from one standard over several days. Now, when you think about a standard, it takes several days to teach most standards. So it's often that you'll see on, the first day where you introduce it, you might have more hands-on methods and really start slow. And then as you progress through teaching that standard, you start to teach more abstract methods or other strategies, or go in a little deeper, use some harder numbers, or etc. So in this plan, I want to see that you can plan out 3 connected days around one topic. So our math standards are really meaty and they have a lot to them. So choosing one standard would be absolutely appropriate. But if you want to use two, at most, I would say three, but that's really pushing the standards. When we think about your standard and your objective, you want to have your objective aligned to the main learning of that day. And while there might be other connected standards, you don't need to list all of the connected standards. You can just list the main learning. What do you want students to accomplish for that day of learning? All right, let's go ahead and look at the directions. So you're going to be doing all of the things you've been doing in a lesson plan where you begin with your standards, you write your learning targets and objective, and you think about your assessment, keeping those end learning goals in mind before you start planning the day to day, like what are you going to do to meet those goals? This really helps you stay focused on what's important. So if we are learning about multiplication, we really stay focused on that idea of multiplication without pulling in division on the same day. I would never introduce those two concepts on the same day. I would teach multiplication for several weeks and then subsequently start teaching division. So once you get those three things, starting with the objective standard and your assessment, then you want to move on to thinking about your instruction and your activities and making sure that the formative assessment are all aligned. You're going to create 3 days of instruction. So you're going to use that class profile. Keep in mind that your English language learners are often a level 3 and 4 on this class profile, which means they don't need translations. They speak English. They just need academic language support, which often comes in the form of giving them sentence frames, word banks, visuals, hands ons, and those types of modifications. Now you're going to clearly integrate all of those different things, the teaching strategies. You want to make sure you're encouraging the critical thinking and the problem solving. You have opportunities for inquiry, collaboration, and interaction, supportive interaction. Um, and in this assignment, we do not need to use APA. So let's go ahead and take a look at the templates that we can use. I will attach them to this week's announcement, so you can see them. So there are two templates I'm going to let you use, although the directions only give you one. The first one is just the traditional lesson plan template that you find in the assignment directions. And this includes pretty much everything that's on the traditional lesson plan, except for it has 3 days consolidated. If you have the same standard over those 3 days, it's okay, but your objectives should be changing a little bit. So it might be I'm learning multiplication through making equal groups with manipulatives, and then I'm going to learn multiplication through using a strategy of repeated addition, and then I'm learning multiplication through skip counting or something along those lines. Your academic language, you might see some crossover between those 3 days, which is okay. And then when you think about your materials and resources, you always want to think about what hands-on materials would benefit my struggling learners. So whether the English language learners or special education or just kids who really need to do this in hands-on, always think about a hands-on um, way that you can include either in the differentiation or within your plan. All right, so let's go ahead. Then your instructional planning goes here, and we have our same components you see on the lesson plan. Anticipatory set, multiple means of representation, and then differentiating for that representation. And then we go into engagement and then differentiating for that engagement. Now on here, I should be seeing step-by-step directions exactly what you would be doing each day. So when I think about representation, this is how are you teaching? What are you doing to present the materials to students? When I think about engagement, I think about what are students doing to practice? So up in my representation part, I will introduce multiplication by modeling this on the board. I will put the problem 5 times 2. I will ask the students this. And then the engagement is what the students are doing. So the students will start practicing problems on their whiteboard or whatever it may be. I will give them 2 problems. They will work in partners to solve the problems. I want to know exactly step by step what everybody will be doing. And then your expression is going to be how are you assessing students? And then always include some sort of extension or homework. Don't just say they're going to do a worksheet. Give me a little more. They're going to go home and they're going to practice several multiplication problems by looking in their cupboards and finding equal groups like sodas or candies or something like that where they can make equal groups. And that's it for the traditional template. But I also like to offer the 5E plan template because the 5E lesson plan is very much an inquiry based lesson plan. And it does more of that teaching mathematics through problem solving. And so this I created based on the other template and the 5E template. And I just merged the two. And so we have a lot of the same components, except for in the 5E plan, we have a lesson focus question like, how do we make equal groups or why are equal groups important? I could put a lesson focus question. And then they have a lot of the same things. And then we have some differentiation strategies during your instruction, activities, and assessment. And be specific to your subgroups. ELLs will get this. Special education students will get this. Gifted students will be challenged this way. And then in the instruction part is where we really see the change. We see the 5 E's. So in the engage phase, it's just like the anticipatory set. You are not teaching here. You might be reviewing prior concepts or engaging students to get excited about the lesson, maybe introducing the lesson focus question. In the explore phase, students will explore. You still are not teaching yet. They are exploring before you teach. So you'll pose a problem like students, you're having a birthday party and you have 30 people coming, or you have tables of 5 at them, and each table can sit, you have 5 tables, each table can sit 6 people. How many people can you invite to your party? Something like that. And they'll explore and figure it out before you ever tell them, hey, you're doing multiplication. Then your teaching happens in the explain phase. You want to have them introduce their solutions and have class discussion. And then you go into teaching vocabulary and the concepts. Hey, look at we today I saw this student make equal groups with the manipulatives. That's exactly what multiplication is. And now you formally introduce multiplication here. And then they go practice a little bit more in the elaborate phase, or they go home and do some homework, or they make some connections at home, and then your formative assessment. So those are the 2 plans that you can use. I will attach them to this week's assignment. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rubric. So on the rubric for this assignment, we just have our titles, our summaries, our standards and objectives. I'm really looking at your standards and objectives when I'm grading this part to make sure that they're well aligned and measurable. And when we see a target, we can see that you have realistic titles, creative, but really I'm looking at those standards. Are they expertly selected? Do they build on each other? Are your objectives measurable? And is everything aligned? Your standards, your instruction, your assessment. So that's where I'm looking for alignment. And then we have the multiple means of representation. And when I grade the 5E plan, I just switch this out for explain. So multiple means of representation is where teacher is teaching. So this is where I change explain for. Then we have multiple means of engagement. This is how students are engaging with the content. Make sure that you have activities that allow them to do inquiry without just copying your thinking. Allow them to collaborate, to work together. Tell me that they're going to work in pairs. Tell me you're going to do a think, pair, share. Um, And then you have communications and ways to differentiate for our student needs in here. So I'm looking at all of those areas when I'm grading this. Um, I forgot to go over the representation. So that says that you're explaining the standards-based math concepts. See, this is where the teacher is teaching, and you're incorporating opportunities to have students problem solve, to reason, and communicate. So you're giving those opportunities, like you might present an idea and then ask students, what do you think? And then we have our assessment, which is our multiple means of expression, or our evaluate phase in the 5E plan. And this is just making sure that you have both summative and formative assessments in your plan. You're thinking about how you're going to assess students, and it does not have to be anything crazy when we think about formative assessment. You can literally give them one problem on a sticky note or on the board and say, write this on the sticky note, and that can serve as an assessment. It doesn't have to be a quiz, it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You just want to see what students know and are able to do and if they've met your objective. And then also think about differentiating. So maybe you'll let the students use cubes that struggle, or maybe that you'll give them an easier problem or something along those lines. And then we have resources. So like I said, I really like to see some use of manipulatives in every math plan for our struggling learners, because we know that our struggling learners need those hands-on and visual ways. And then just organization. Does your plan flow in a nice 3 days where it builds on each other and relate to each other? And finally, mechanics. Right. So this is your benchmark mathematics assignment. If you have any questions as you're working on this, please don't hesitate to reach out.